Most people think child protection is about reacting when something goes wrong. But what if I told you that there are people out there doing the work before that happens, standing up, stepping in, and protecting kids in ways that most of us don't even realize and don't even know that we need to be doing? In today's episode, I'm joined by Adam from Fighters Against Child Abuse Australia. And this conversation will completely shift how you think about advocacy, protection, and your role in keeping kids safe. Let's get into it and let's go and talk to Adam. Hello and welcome back to the Conversations with Kristi podcast. I'm excited to be talking to a good friend, Adam, who is from Fighters Against Child Abuse Australia. Now, I was just saying to Adam, I was having a think about how long we've known each other, and we have never met in person. That's how the internet works. We meet all of these amazing people on the internet. So it does have its place, doesn't it, Adam? Like, we get to connect with like-minded individuals and people who are on the same path as us. We met a few years ago when we, through a mutual friend or a mutual contact who you were actually offered to support or help at the time through some stuff. So it's been years now, and I am a massive fan of your work. I always try and share when you put something up, and I'm just grateful that you are in that space. I think I've said this before. Advocacy is different for every person, and each person has a role. My advocacy is obviously different to your advocacy, but the thing is that when we stick to the lanes we're in, and we can all work, but yet we join together and we create a better place for everyone. Adam, you can explain what you do and how you do it, and how you got into it, basically. But I was just thinking it back to, sometimes people ask me for certain support and help, and I'm like, well, actually, this person's the best person because that's what they focus on. Whereas I focus on, obviously, advocating for better education and awareness and, getting behind people like yourself and other advocates when they bring something to the table. So I just wanted to mention that, your advocacy is in awareness as well, but you do so much. So if you don't mind explaining to the Conversations with Kristi listeners what you and FACAA do.
Yeah, so FACAA stands for Fighters Against Child Abuse Australia. And like yourself, we do a lot of awareness raising and legal reform work. But we've got a registered charity and it goes much deeper than just the awareness raising. Our main focus is on empowering victim survivors of child abuse, of any form of child abuse, and also making sure that they get their healing journeys in a different kind of unique way. We started, as I said, 16 years ago, as in a very organic way. I just literally wanted to help a kid out that needed it. And my partner and I were talking around the whole, fact that this should be everywhere, because I've been a counsellor straight out of high school, straight into TAFE and then university. And I always found that the traditional models of counselling didn't work for me as a kid and didn't work for a lot of my friends as a kid. And so when I was personally doing my counselling work, my internships and things like that, I'd go shoot hoops with my clients, or I'd go hold pads for them, or I'd just teach them simple martial arts moves. And I always found that got a much deeper connection, much quicker, and also yielded much, much better results in terms of, their awareness and things like that. So when I offered to help this kid out that obviously needed it, we sort of discussed, can we get more help for more kids? And so I just put a call out, and I've been a martial artist since I was 4 years old, so like 41 years now. Jesus Christ, I am old. But
Me too, mate. Me too.
When you do it out loud, sometimes it hits you. But yeah, I just put a call out to any of my friends, and the response was overwhelming. And I got people from all corners of Australia say, hey, sign me up. What have we got to do? And it kind of occurred to me that I have no idea what to do, no idea how to sign someone up. And so we kind of just started saying, okay, you'll need a working with children check, you'll need insurance, and you'll need to prove, your lineage, that at least you know something, because there's a lot of bad coaches out there. And so that's literally how it started. And I ended up needing a Facebook page just to try and organize everyone, so I didn't get bombarded with inboxes and emails. And then we just kind of organically grew from there. We had people say to us, hey, I'm going to court. Can you help me? Mm-hmm. And before I knew it, we were on a flight to Brisbane, for example, to go support a victim survivor who just wasn't getting the support that they needed. And a lot of the time, don't get me wrong, the WAS services and witness assistance services and places like that do a great job. But unless you've walked that path yourself, unless you've lived in those moments of terror, say lining up to go through the metal detectors at court. Simple things like that, you just don't know. And there's no way of knowing that could potentially be a problem. So that's where we step in. And we offer lived experience court support as well as our flagship, which is our Phoenix Survivors Healing Program, which sponsors. It started off as martial arts and then it expanded out into people were asking us for gymnastics, dance. We now have music therapy hooked up. We now have art therapy hooked up. And I just kind of went by the attitude of if it'll help, we'll work out a way to verify it. And then, yeah, if they want to do it, then I'll talk to the instructor or the coach or the teacher. And the results have been outstanding,
Yeah.
absolutely outstanding. Been quite blessed for the past 16 years to get inboxes and emails from victim survivors saying, hey, this is me now. And it's just incredible the turnaround that we've seen. And yeah, we also got into the legal reform space. It's the same thing organically. Someone said this law needs to change. And I'm like, you're damn right it does. How do we do that? And it was literally Google how to change a law. And we got so lucky because there was a committee convened in New South Wales and it happened to be featuring our local member at the time, who was Melanie Gibbons at the time. And we put a submission in and got asked to go speak. And we went in and spoke, and herself and Mark Speakman, who was the Attorney General at the time, pulled us aside and asked us to speak again and in front of a smaller group. It was insane. The response was great. And yeah, so we kind of just decided, okay, we're going to do this as well. And that's literally how the charity grew. Anything that was needed, anything that we got requests for, if we could physically pull it off, we would.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess being a not-for-profit or a charity, it makes it so that you can put all of your effort into those legislative changes, those support services and work. So one of the interesting things that you mentioned is about, needing to like connecting with the people, the kids or the victim survivors and like, throwing the hoops or holding pads and stuff like that. What is it about movement combining that with actually doing therapy or counseling? Like there's got to be something in it for it to be
There
so
is.
successful.
There really is. There's been dozens of studies done into actual serotonin and dopamine released during exercise. There's also been one in Northern Ireland that studied the specific benefits of martial arts for victim survivors, which found incredible success with they were doing non-contact karate at the time. It's just the movement, like you said. It's just the physicality of moving around and the dopamine. I don't understand it. I'm not even going to pretend. But the dopamine levels in the brain raise. Dopamine is a great antidepressant as well.
Yeah.
And, I always sort of make sure that if I'm having a bad day mentally, I get to work early, put the gloves on, and just wail it out on a bag. And I know for myself just how much that helps. And I know several of our clients have said, hey, I can't get to training at the moment, but I really need to go. I really feel like I just need to go to training. And we'll help them out. We'll find someone that can take them or whatever it takes to get them there. And afterwards, I'll say, no, I feel a bit more level now. I feel great. I've got this challenge and I know I can take it on or whatever it is. But yeah, it's easily measured in terms of if you just want to try it out for yourself, you can just jump up, go for a run or move around. And it's not a mood stabilizer. I call it a mood enhancer. It
Yeah.
will pick you up and help you out a lot. But yeah, it's just particularly for victim survivors of trauma, we find that there's a lot more than just the movement in say, the martial arts environment. There's, really good role models that will be there and help them break the lack of trust that they have, or there'll be a whole team environment, a whole social aspect to it where everyone's, trying to work out and get the same goal, achieve. And that there's another one element to it, the achievement levels. We have a dance studio hooked up and they tell us about their levels and things like that. And they'll tell us outright, oh, I'm chasing level 4 today. I'm going for my level 4. And I'll be like, great, go smash it. And, that sense of achievement, it gives them something that they just wouldn't have otherwise had. And yeah,
I
yeah,
think it also it's you can see, especially with martial arts or dancing or any of these, because it is broken up into grades. It means it's
yep,
achievable. It's small little achievable goals.
exactly. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that means a lot to someone who has been told that they're nothing, someone that's been told that no one will ever believe in them or no one will ever believe them, which, as you know yourself, is quite a common grooming tactic.
Yeah, exactly. And also one of the things that I think also helps is that I talk about when we're trying to connect with our own kids is getting onto their level.
Yeah.
So, kicking the footy. So you're not making this because the topic itself is so serious. So,
Mm,
doing something that is fun, engaging dopamine, etc., really makes a difference.
absolutely. And I did actually see you discuss that, and I completely agree about getting on their level and doing something that's a bit. You could almost call it a distraction from the topic at hand, And if you're just kicking a footy or whatever they want to do, and yeah, it allows a much better flow of speech. And it sounds weird because you think that they'd be distracted, but kids will often talk a lot more openly and a lot more freely, especially if it's a topic they don't want to discuss.
Well, the distraction is really helpful because I know when I was interviewing kids, how intimidating it is to sit across the table from someone
Yep.
whilst talking about something so horrendous and so annoying. Like for some kids, it's like, I don't want to talk about it, but they're making me talk about it, right? But
Yeah.
I don't want to discuss this. And who wants to? Like adult
Yeah.
survivors don't want to talk about this stuff, let alone victim survivors, like children survivors. And so,
100%.
I think we don't put enough it really pisses me off, really. And, Adam, I think you and I are of the same sort of wavelength in regards to the systems that are set up are not fit for purpose anymore. And they'll never fit for purpose. They fit a purpose, and it's not the purpose for the victim. It's not the purpose for the survivor. It's for the purpose of the court and for police, etc.
Yeah. We always say this in comments and in posts. We don't have a justice system. We do not. And, we barely have a legal system. It's called the criminal justice system. And I truly believe that is for a deliberate reason because like you said, it's never been fit for purpose. And if you built a system, I don't think you could put any more flaws in it than the current system, the way it exists,
I know.
particularly around children, you know,
Mhm.
and you yourself, you would have had to interview kids knowing full well that you probably weren't going to get anything out of them. And because it is such a difficult task. How do you get a child to talk about something they don't want to talk about in that sort of environment, that closed off, you're in an office style space.
Yeah.
How do you then get them to discuss something they didn't want to talk about in the first place, didn't have wanted to have happened? And that's what a lot of people don't realize with victim survivors is they didn't want it to happen in the first place.
Didn't
And
ask
so
for it.
they didn't ask for it. And everyone says, why does it take 10 years to come out and actually discuss this? Because it does. And 10 years is actually being very generous.
Yeah.
It can take up to 30 years for these. And that's one of the findings from the Royal Commission is that disclosures take up to 30 years, and that's just the way it is. And people
Well,
can't
and
understand that.
it's because we don't support our victims properly.
No.
And it's because it's such a difficult thing. Like a lot of the cases that our victims and our children and survivors are dealing with, they're with people that they actually have grown up with, they care about. Some of them are, parents, some of them are family members. There's a lot of grooming involved, there's a lot of threats and intimidation involved. And then you go
Yeah.
into the court system, you go into the justice system. You say about me interviewing kids. Most like I really struggle with my part in it, but at the same time, I'm glad I know what I know now because if I hadn't, I did my best with what I had. But you, as a
Yep.
police officer, you're not given. You really are like it's blinkers on. You think, okay, I just have to do, and I'm in two minds about it. It's like a survival. You have to survive in that system that you've got, but in the same mind frame, like if I look back on who I was and what I was thinking back then, it was like, this is all I can do. That's what you're taught. It's all you can do.
Hmm.
If they don't speak up, that's it. You know, like literally tick the box and
Yep.
next. And so,
Yep.
and I look back on that and I think, far out, man. Like I know that there was kids I interviewed who were being abused but didn't say anything because it was the wrong, like they're pressured into it. And all of the things that were going on there. So there's
Yep.
nothing outside of that other than child protection. And child protection have their own blinkers. So, like it's like the systems are all if the child doesn't speak up, if the child does speak up, then they're not trusted or not believed anyway by
Yep.
the rest of the system, and so it's really difficult. And I don't discourage people from reporting because they have to. In most cases, you have to report to police, but I don't put a lot of faith anymore in, the reporting process because there is so many ways that it can backfire, fail, and not the person's not supported.
Yep. I don't discourage or encourage people to go
No, it's their choice at the end of the day.
100%. And I make sure I give them an informed choice. I tell them what will happen. I mean, look, we tried to change
Mm.
this 12 years ago at our first thing, at our first committee in New South Wales. We helped write a legislation called the Children's Champion Program. And we did as much as we could get over the line. Like we had the laws written that an advocate could read out the testimony of the victim survivor in court. And there was other things like, plainclothes detectives, trauma informed data collection, things like that. And it was absolutely heartbreaking to get this over the line, to think, okay, we've made these changes, and then see what it became. And it fell so fast, so quickly. A new administration came in and they renamed it from the Children's Champion Program to the Witness Intermediary Program. And we were like, okay, it was supposed to be supporting children, and why was it changed? And oh no, it's just a better name. And then we were told by a defense lawyer who was defending against someone who was in the Witness Intermediate Program, thank you for that, because that's made my case easier to win. And I said, how the hell has it made your case easier to win? And he said, well, because right now the Witness Intermediary Program has a backlog of about 18 months because it's underfunded. And I just about quit, to be perfectly honest. It was such a body blow to hear that something that was created with such amazing intentions. And I know the politicians involved that helped work on that were in there for the right reasons, and everyone wanted to make some lasting change, only to hear that they've now underfunded it and stripped it, even of its title, was just heartbreaking. And this is sadly the system that we live in. You can make the changes, you can have the laws changed, and then the judges can just ignore it. Like you can have recommended minimum sentences, and the judges can go, no, I don't want to get an appeal, so I'm going to give this sentence. It's absolutely, it's like you said, it's not fit for purpose. It never has been fit for purpose. And
It's not putting children first at all. It's not putting victims first, and it hasn't for a long time.
no,
I've been through trials and I've been through court cases with victims. And from my perspective as the investigating officer, it's like absolutely nerve wracking. Like, as the person who's going before the court with all of the evidence and saying this is the case, it's terrifying because one little bit of doubt can just throw it all out. And I mean, that's the system we have. And I know that that's the reason for it, but we don't protect or support victims enough. And that's why people like yourself and FACAA, and we've got, Bikers Against Child Abuse as well, people who are, whether they win or lose, at least they've got a support network behind them. At
yeah,
least someone's there to, catch them. Because I tell you what, once your case is over, I'm pretty sure your freaking support network's gone from the court and from everywhere else. We do have some in Western Australia. I know that we do have some sexual assault centres and child sexual abuse centres, but that's counselling. That's rock up to an appointment every week or every month and see someone and talk about it. It's not that family network, that those group of people around you that you're providing assistance in way of, do you like dancing? Okay, we're going to get you some dancing lessons. Or do you like gymnastics? Or do you like to fight? And one of the things that I spoke to a guy over here, he's called and I get his name wrong all the time, the How Not to Die guy. Have you heard of him?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and I spoke to him and he was saying that just knowing a little bit of self-defense gives so much courage back, or like
yes,
like they realize that they've got more power than they thought, because that's what abuse
absolutely,
does. It takes away someone's power, their inner power.
absolutely, yeah. And God, I could be all day giving examples, but I always think back to one little girl in particular. She was about 8 years old, and she was terrified, to say the least. She'd been through some horrendous things, and she used to hide behind mum when she'd first come in. And mum, to her credit, would bring her in every couple of days for like 3 weeks before she even looked at walking out. And then one day she was just sitting down in the lines, and I'm like, oh, okay, cool. How you doing? And then, but she wouldn't look at me. She wouldn't, I'd hold a pad up. She just wouldn't look at me. She wouldn't look me in the eyes. And I get it. So I'd hold a pad without looking. I'd just be,
Yeah.
these ones. And fast forward a few weeks, and she started to really build up her courage and really build up her strength. And then fast forward to her first grading, and she's there in a uniform, and she's throwing these teachers around. And yeah, they're throwing themselves for her, and they're making it look spectacular. And she's screaming into every punch, and she's like right in their faces, like right up in these adult faces. And
Oh, no.
I had to step back at that stage. I was like, oh my God, look at her go. And like you said, that's the sort of power that it gives back. And that's exactly why we do it. And, my hat goes off to you, to be honest. I couldn't imagine sitting in a courtroom after months of evidence gathering and watch a perpetrator walk away on a technicality and having the strength to just dust it off and do it again. How did you handle that?
I didn't. That's how I ended up with PTSD. It wasn't the kids, it wasn't hearing their stories at all. Like, for me, I could handle that every day of the week, because by being the person that could tell that they could tell that to, I knew that I was giving them their voices back by just sitting and, absorbing their stories and, like, allowing them to have a voice. But sitting in a courtroom and, like you said, a technicality where a child's like, they're children, for goodness sakes, and their whole credibility gets ripped apart, and it's everything about their life and their family, or, if it's a parent that's abused them, the other parent gets stripped apart of their credibility, and it's just horrendous how we treat these situations. And I still struggle to deal with defense lawyers because of it. Like, I would this was the thing, like, I would be in court and I was on the stand, I'd be getting ripped apart myself, and I was very good at, like, being staunch and, like, no, because part of being a detective and going through detective training is they teach you how to go sit on the stand. It's a yes or no answer, and then if you wanna answer more, you have to and you don't even look at the defense. Like, it's very interesting training. You don't look at the defense, you're looking at the judge the whole time. You answer them, but you look at them. And so, yeah, so there's a whole thing to
Yeah,
it.
right.
It's a whole class on,
I have
cross-examination
noticed
training.
that in courts, but yeah, I haven't actually. I've never
Never
approached.
heard that. Yeah.
No,
You get trained how to be cross-examined. Anyway, so I'm very good at I was very good at being cross-examined because I would only answer what I was asked, and if they tried to trip me up. So this is the whole point.
mm,
Victims don't get that training, and especially when it's so there's so much emotion attached to what's happened. It's such an emotional process, right?
mm,
And we don't have the trauma informed practice, because if you've got trauma, you don't have a lot of control over your reactions at times, because the trauma is what you're reacting to, not the question. It's the fact, if you didn't have a voice and they're cutting you off and not allowing you to speak, you're gonna be triggered and traumatized by that. And that's exactly what defense lawyers are doing. They try to do in every case. They want you to react emotionally. They want you to overreact. They want you to blurt things out, because then they can say that you're basically, lying, emotional, blah 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 blah. They use it to break down your credibility.
yeah,
So, yeah, so it's just crazy, and I just sitting a yeah. So my point is defense lawyers would do that in the
mm,
courtroom, and as a
mhm,
police officer, you get called up after the witness, so you don't get to see the witness's evidence. So during the court process, you list who goes first. It's always the victim or the
mhm,
victims, and then it goes from there. Like the professional witnesses, so like doctors and psychologists, they go
mm,
next. Police go police, and then all that. So you're not allowed in the courtroom until after you've given your evidence. So you never see any of this evidence given in court. You just hear about it afterwards. And
yeah,
so, yeah, I would sit there and I would hear about all of the things the defense lawyer did, and then they would be nice to me in the hallway, and I'd be like,
yeah, yeah,
I'm an Aries, man. Like, I am fiery, and I have no problems with ignoring people. And I would look at them like, "Are you fucking kidding me? Don't talk to me." And I always had a problem. I see defense lawyers who've cross-examined me all the time, like this around where I live, And I'm like,
Yep.
that's the other thing. Like you go on, so in your socials, you go on and discuss or share cases, actual cases, and name and shame, basically. I mean, it's not shaming, it's basically calling them out and saying, this person did this. But this is the thing, right? The reason why I think the reason why sex offenders have got away with it for so long is because no one used to talk about it. No one used to call them out on it.
Yep.
And I mean, the social media, as much as it's a pain in the ass, it's actually been a blessing because once something goes to court. So, can you just explain to listeners why you're able to do that in some cases and not others? Because I don't think everyone understands. So, the cases you talk about are cases that have been before the court and they've been sentenced. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. You can't
We
talk
we
about
don't.
cases that haven't had that process yet.
So there's a few rules for our social media pages. Number one, we're not a name and shame page. We're an awareness raising page. We want people to realize that this is happening on their streets,
Yeah.
in their neighborhoods, to their people, because it's very disempowering or silencing for victim survivors to hear words like, "Oh, that doesn't happen here."
Yeah.
Especially like you said, like you touched on before, if it's the parent of the victim survivor, they're going through enough guilt and shame as it is. Now they've got to suddenly couple on the fact that they're being hated for putting their father behind bars by their uncles, by their cousins, things like that. So for people to say, no, that doesn't happen here. I'm sorry, you're wrong. I don't care where you are. I don't care who you are. It's happening in your neighborhood, to your people, in your demographic, whatever. That's what the awareness raising pages do. We have to have a few rules. Like, we don't take on convictions on. We wait for a conviction, and a lot of people they're amazing. FACAA Army will send us links and say, this guy just got charged with this, and it'll be great. As soon as they're convicted, we're going to make them famous.
Yes.
Okay.
You have to wait for that.
We have to wait. We also have to have a verifiable source. That's the other thing. Like, we get sent a lot of court papers and things like that. And as appreciative as we are for them, we can't run it because you could just be like,
documents.
Correct. And we also get photos. This is him. And it's like, yeah, that's great, but I'm sorry, but I don't know who you are. You could be, anyone, and this could be anyone. There's no correlation. So we wait for a reputable media outlet to run it.
Yes.
And even then, I'll double check it. I'll run the names through Google. And unless I pull up about 4 or 5 different links to that article, I'm not going to run it. It's just that simple. It's just not worth the risk. And, people get a bit frustrated with it sometimes, and I totally understand it. We want to give a voice to every voiceless person out there, but some stories we can't run. It's just that simple. Sometimes they'll get a conviction, and then at sentencing they'll get a suppression order.
Yes.
And if we find evidence,
and it means no one can run it, not even the media can.
No. And if you look at the example of Darren Hinch, he got longer behind bars than the guy that he named. And it's insane, our system. So we do have to abide by quite a few rules, and we do have to jump through a few hoops. And that's fine. Trust me, there's enough story. There's enough story.
You're never going to be without, like, for instance, I'm just thinking, and I have done this on my page once before. I've warned people, because when Daniel's Law came through in Queensland, right? And everyone was jumping on and they were checking and everything like that. I did put a warning on, is that you cannot share this on your social media or any social media at all. It even says it when you sign and click, because in Western Australia it's the same. If you put that person's image up, you are identifiable on that image, and then what can happen is you can be charged, because there is legislation protecting the dissemination of child sex offender registered offenders information. And I've actually had to do I've actually had to go, and it goes against everything I believe in, but at the same time, the legislation's there. You can get in trouble. And I actually had someone come up to me last year or so. I was doing a presentation about grooming, and they said to me, basically a family member had looked up in Western Australia, because we had it in Western Australia. They'd found out that this person, their neighbour, was a registered sex offender. They'd seen the image and they shared it with someone, sent the image to someone. And then what happened is they ended up getting charged. She was a mother of 2 kids. She got charged with sharing that image with someone or something, and she had to go to court and everything. It's just, I know that we want to protect our friends and family. It's fine to tell them that there's someone in your area, but you can't risk it, because There's too many laws protecting that, and it might seem unfair that that's the case. So unless it's public knowledge, they've been charged, there's no suppression orders in place. And don't forget, I mean, a lot of the court cases we never ever hear about are intrafamilial. They're cases we can't even touch and talk about because they're protected by the legislation around victim. It's meant to protect the victim. Unfortunately, it generally protects the offender as well. So unless the victim is over the age of 18 and decides to waiver their anonymity, they can choose to waiver that as well. So there's a lot of things holding us back from being as open and honest about what's going on in the community.
Oh, absolutely. Dozens of cases, like you said, interfamilial that I'd love to report on. I'd love to just get on the page and say, listen, this is so and so. This is what they've done. And like you said, it would literally cost me the charity. The charity would be shut down.
It's not worth
And
it.
everyone that we help would then have to find a new outlet, find a new way. And I know the waiting lists on most of the mental health assistance out there. The waiting lists are huge, and I'm just not going to do that to our clients. I'm not. Yeah, it's not a risk that I ever take.
No. And you have to be smart because it could cost you that. It could cost all of the victims that you help and survivors that you help. So how do people support FACAA? Like if you're based over in New South Wales, I know that you work out of like a lot of places. You help in a lot of different ways. So how does it work with, supporting people if they get in touch with you or want to know more?
We've got a team of volunteers that work throughout Australia. We don't really advertise very heavily what they do, but they do a lot of boots on ground sort of stuff like court support or going and just having a coffee with a victim survivor, things like that. And that's all part of our Phoenix healing program. But if people wanted to support the charity itself, they can hit up our website, which is just FACAA Oz. Oh, sorry, yeah, FACAAUS.org. And there's a donation portal on that. We don't receive a cent from any government sources, council,
Yep.
state, federal. We
You're
are
self-funding.
obviously aiming to fix that because after 16 years, I'm at a point where I feel like we could really help a lot more if we were funded. Yeah, we are entirely self-funded at the moment, entirely on donations, and most of those donations come through the donation portal on our website. There's a lot of PayPal giving funds. People nominate us for their birthday fund, which is always awesome to see. But no, a lot of what we do is just volunteer basis. A lot of what we do is people who just want to help out, martial arts organizations, and anyone that wants to be a part of the Phoenix program. 90% of the time they'll come to us and say, hey, whatever the fees are, we'll take them, and just pay for their. We usually pay for the outgoing costs like uniforms, registration, stuff like that. But yeah, most of the fees are amazing. Instructors will go, hey, you're good, just fix us up for what I'm out of pocket. But
Does the victim survivor or like the child or whoever, do they have to like tell anyone what's happened to them, or is it all?
God no,
No,
God
I
no.
didn't think
No,
so, but I wanted to put
no,
it
no.
out there.
No, we've never asked questions. If someone says to us that I'm a victim survivor, I'm going to say, okay, here's what we can do. We also, I'm quite proud to say, are one of the only charities that helps family members, immediate, non-offending family members of the victim survivor, because we find that we get better results if,
It's
say,
supporting the whole family.
yeah, absolutely.
Of course. And I say
yeah,
this all the time, like if your child's going through it, you're going through it, and you need as much
100%.
support to be able to support them.
Absolutely. And so, yeah, we'll take on entire families and get
Yeah.
them training together. And I mean, that's always awesome to
That's
see
fun.
the whole family. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. I mean,
But yeah,
I got into martial arts when I was a police officer. I did Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu. And the interesting thing is it was always like it was whilst I was in the child abuse squad, whilst I was a detective dealing with child abuse, and it was so cathartic for me to have that, release. I don't need it as much now. I do more softer things with my broken body these days. One of the things that I did find, and I think I can understand why, for someone who's going through something, even if, it's not happening anymore, but just it's so empowering to have those skills as well, to know that you can defend yourself, to know that to have an outlet to get all that anger and hatred and fear out of your body, because it stores up in your body. And so, having an outlet, whether it's dancing, whether it's gymnastics, whether it's fighting, whether it's kicking something, whether it's whatever. For me personally, like, it was a godsend. It saved my mental health when I was in those spaces, because I had somewhere to go that I could get rid of all of that anger and that
Mm.
pain, hurt, and
Oh,
stuff.
absolutely. I truly believe all police officers should have some level of training that's above what they're
I
currently
mean, they
getting.
do a little bit of empty hand in the
Yeah,
academy these days, but it's
yeah,
not enough.
yeah.
I was very proud of the fact that I did jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai for myself. It was for myself, but it helped. I mean, I'm 5'1". If we ever meet in person, I'm a tiny little person. And, but also one of the things is when you're confident, people just, I never felt like, and it's a weird thing to say out loud. Like, yeah, I do get scared and I do feel like I've got to watch myself right now. But when you're
Mhm.
confident, your confidence shows and people do notice it. So they don't actually think, like, I was never the one to back down. I was like, yeah, okay, let's go. And they'd be
Yeah.
like, what do you think you're gonna do? And I'm like, well, try me.
But that's it. And a lot of people underestimate that.
Mm.
There was this study done in America where they talked about how these monsters pick their victims. And they literally said that one.
Yeah,
And
they've
they're
got to
like,
decide which one.
yeah, that because their predatory instincts took one look and went, this one's hunched over, this one's got no confidence, this is the one that I'm going to be able to get. And they looked at kids with confidence who were doing things, and they were like, no, I'll just go for the next one. And that's a
Exactly.
horrible, horrible statement to make, but it touches on what you said before about your self-confidence levels. Your self-confidence levels will reflect to others. And like when we get these photos and these videos of our clients beaming with pride and beaming with confidence, that's the payoff for me. That's the hell yeah, let's do this again sort of thing. Because like you said, confidence is visible to others,
Yes.
especially the predators.
Yeah, yeah, 1000%. I used to go to jobs like domestic violence, call outs and jobs where someone's been abused and stuff. And I'd think, and when you got the history of the situation and you found out that they had been a victim multiple times, and I'd be like, and I've said this out loud before, I've been like, it's like they've got victim stamped on their head, right? Because when you're a victim, and it used to upset me because I'd be like, how is it that this person knew to prey on this person? How is it that this predator knew to pick
Yep.
this woman and her kids, right? It used to and you're right, they can see it. So the
Mhm.
more confidence you can build in yourself, and if you can't build it straight away, fake it until you make it. Like, carry your head high and
100%.
put your shoulders back and freaking walk
Yep.
into a room like you own it, whether you feel it or not. But
Yep.
doing martial arts makes you feel like that. And
100%.
having that confidence in, I can stand on my own and no one can take me down, or if they do try, I'm going to fight them. And so that
100%.
makes a big difference. And from my experience with kids, is that if you do that with kids just for their own personal belief, and they're less likely to be bullied, but they're also less likely to become the bully, and they're more
100%.
likely to be the one that stands up for the smaller people, and be the kid that stands up for the little person, because they're like, no, we do not do this to other people. That's what martial arts and training like that does.
Yeah, and that's exactly, you hit the nail right on the head. They're the ones that have stood up, so they would know that they will stand up again if needed.
Yeah.
And look, we always tell our kids to start trouble, never start it. We don't
Yeah.
have to be
No,
perfectly honest. 'Cause,
but you can finish
no,
it.
yeah, there you go. Don't start trouble. If you have to finish it, sorry, not
Yeah.
really sorry.
No,
But
that's
yeah,
right, and that was a thing that I was taught in, like, I taught my own daughter. I was like, "You don't start trouble, because we are not here to make trouble with people, but don't be scared to stand up for yourself and be the person that finishes it." And it's not
100%.
because I'm not saying that from a perspective as you walk around with these big, like, I can beat everyone up. No, you can walk around knowing that no one can push you down and bully you if possible. And if they do, you're going to fight to back. And it sounds strange to hear, but I think that's what I was taught. And I think that's what martial arts teaches you. Because as a police officer, as a small police officer, I was taught it's either, because it can be lethal. Like, if I was in a situation where someone got hold of my gun or taser, I could be dead. So it
100%.
was like it, and we were taught that if someone tries to assault you, it's basically you have to be the one that wins that confrontation, because like, again, you don't start things if you can help it, but you
Mhm.
definitely don't let anyone else finish it.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. I work quite closely with a few law enforcement officers and from various departments, and they tell me the same thing. They say it's them or me. And when you think about what that actually means, like a lot of people don't realize the benefits of self defense, because when they say it's them or you, it's not just them or you, it's their family or your family. One family is going to be crying. One family is going to be upset. One family is going to be, and damn right it's not going to be my family. And that's what we always kind of try and tell them, because a lot of people go into law enforcement without the realization of just how real it's going to get for them. I couldn't go into a domestic violence situation knowing that this perpetrator's done this how many times now or whatever it is, because
It's
it's
so
not
much
in me.
psychology. There's so much psychology and so much head fucking basically in any of these situations. Like it's a, it took me many years to reconcile some of my own personal beliefs, and to it wasn't until I left the police that I actually had more compassion for people than I did when I was in the police. Because in the police, and this is one thing I don't think they do it well enough. They don't provide you enough as in, when you're in the police, all you see is the 5% of the or 10% of the population that's doing the wrong thing. And so
Yes.
you become like, it becomes this this mouse wheel of like another person doing the wrong thing, and so all you think is everyone is a shithead, like everyone's bad, and that's police language. But really, the world isn't as bad as when you get out, you have a lot more compassion. It's a lot more complicated than what it's just you need to do the right thing and you need to stop doing that, and there's a lot more to it. So I think, yeah, but getting back to what we were actually talking about, I think for any child or any person who's out there who really is wondering, how can I empower myself? I think you are onto it. You've created a program and a purpose that helps victim survivors and people, understand that they actually have some power in this place and
Mm.
they can take it back.
Well, especially considering these are the most voiceless people in our society, is the victim survivors that we have. They've had their voices not just suppressed, but completely stolen. And that's why one of our original catch cries or catchphrases, whatever you want to call it, the voice for the voiceless, because we tell their stories and, we help, but more importantly to us, we help them tell their stories.
Yes.
And so, yeah, it's quite a powerful statement, because people don't realize just how insidious grooming is. People don't realize just how, I mean, you obviously do. And,
I know. I know, and I still get people like, I don't know about you, but I mean, obviously my education's a bit different, but I did something about that nothing good happens behind closed doors, right? And I did
Mhm.
a post about it, and and it's been shared. It's gone nuts, right? But I've had so many people jump into my Facebook comments saying, "Oh, you can't just say that. Like, you can't just say that. Like, we need to close our doors because we don't want our dogs in our bedrooms. We need to close our doors because our child's got neurodivergence. We need to do this. We need to that." And I'm like, there is nuance here, and if you watch the whole video, you would get it. What I'm saying is that when you've got multiple children or there's adults and children, doors should be open because they need to be up. We need to know what's going on behind closed doors, and we
Yes.
need to be like, it's where abuse can fester. And so, in
Mhm.
my experience, so like you, I'm sure people come at you and they're like, "Well,
The one that does my head, and I'm sure it's happened to you too, is when you say something that you think is so black and white and you get people saying you're wrong. Like, my personal favorite is every time there's a death of a child, we'll say ending a child's life is wrong. You cannot take the life of a child. And we have people run straight to our comments section and tell me how much of an absolute everything I am, and how dare I, and walk a mile in their shoes. And I sit back going, you're
oh my
talking about
gosh,
murdering children.
welfare
Yep,
check on those people."
finally.
Like,
And
I
it's
mean,
like, you don't.
seriously, I get it. I get that, you might be struggling with your families, but that's not there's no reason to take anyone's life.
Exactly. And that's literally all I've said so many times. And it's like, you're wrong. And, I saw that post about closed doors, and I was going through the comment section going, oh my God, people, you've missed the point. Don't personalize everything, every word.
I know, and I feel sad for them, like, because they're so triggered by the fact that I've called out closed doors, but I'm like, if your child's in their room on their own without a device in there and they wanna be alone in their room in a quiet space, but if there's a device in there, then I'd be worried that something nefarious is happening. If they're in there
Absolutely.
with another child and they're closing the door, how does the child or the younger child get out of that room and get safe if they don't feel safe in that space? Like, people don't look at it the way we do because we know more, I guess, and it's quite interesting how people interpret
It is.
messaging and how they lose the message so quickly.
It's wild sometimes, but yeah.
But I sometimes I wanna see, like, I have to, like, I don't know about you, but I get in, like, I start typing out a reply, and then I go, "Delete, delete, 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 delete." I'm like, "Just don't reply, Kristi. Just don't
Yeah,
reply."
you're a lot better at that than I am. I must admit that is one of my banes. Is I have trouble going. Like even in even in your comment section, I had a couple of typed up responses going. Are you for real? Like, did you watch the whole video? And I'm like, no, 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 just tap it out.
Yeah, delete, 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 delete. No, my
Delete,
husband,
delete, delete. Yeah.
I had a guy have a go at me, a couple of weeks ago while I was overseas, say women shouldn't be police officers. I could beat them any day of the week. I've got it. I screenshotted it and I blocked them because I was so ready to fight back. Like I was so ready to fight back. I did type one message and he was waiting for it. I was sitting in the international airport and it was like, I wrote back and I said, wow, tell me you're a misogynist without telling me you're a misogynist. But I know some females who could definitely fold you up like a pretzel. And then,
Yep.
and he goes, I'll take them on. And then he had a kid in his profile picture. It was
Oh,
him and
that's
his
the.
son. He was him and his son in his profile picture. And I said, you're a dad, mate. Like grow up. And then,
Oh, do better.
but then I just blocked him because my husband was like, you're on holidays, like leave it alone.
You're in the international terminal. What are you doing?
Yeah, he's like,
Yeah,
"Why are you fighting with idiots on the internet?" And
but
I was
yeah,
like,
it is wild.
it's wild putting yourself out there. I know that you probably feel it too. Like sometimes I have to really check myself because, we have families, we have lives, we feel very passionate about this stuff, but we have our own lives that we have to lead and we can't be there for everyone and as much as it pains us to do that. So I'm in awe of you. 16 years. You've been doing FACAA as long as I have been a police officer and being in this advocacy space. So I'm in awe of you for creating what you've created and done what you've done and still going, mate. Like you could, like, do you ever get a moment where you go, I could just give up and get a real job? Or, well,
Well, I have that's the thing a lot of people don't realize is I have a real job. I'm the head instructor of a martial arts academy. I love it. Don't get me wrong. I do not go to work every day. I get up and I go do
to
what
your
I
passion.
I go to my passion every single day. Just the reference to your mate, I definitely have some women that would
I
fold you
know.
like a pretzel, bro.
Dude, I know some
Wow.
really strong women who can they could have him freaking tied up in a arm bar and a freaking choke in 2 seconds.
This, you wouldn't get out of the first, but yeah. So I do have a real job, and like you said, I can't risk that. I do this volunteer. I do this because I have to. Everyone says,
Yeah,
"Where
it's
did you
in
start?"
your blood,
Yeah, I just
it's in
say
your
because
soul.
there's always a saying, "Oh, someone should fix that." Well, yeah. So I just do it because I have to. Yeah. Um, but yeah, I could not be a police officer that went in.
Oh, look, I'm not saying that they don't like they have a really tough job. And I kind of feel like when I was a police officer, I was a different person as well. Like I look back on, I have to kind of, there's the amount of cases that I had to turn away and look away from. And now I look
Wow.
back and I go, yeah, like I look back on that and I go, how fucking disgusting is that? Victims
But
who
that's just
deserved it. Yeah.
limited resources, or
Look, it all comes down to whether a child speaks up or not.
yeah, right. That's a savage statement, but it's one of the most truthful statements about our system that I've ever heard, and
It
how
all comes down to
effectively
that
that child articulates what happened to them. That's
1000%.
that is wild because from interviewing kids, I know from helping them in court
It's not
what
cut
a
and dry. It's so not cut and dry. And like for this is a whole nother podcast, but the thing is that it all comes down to whether the child can say something in that one interview that gives the detectives enough to press charges.
here's a question for you.
If there's not enough in that interview, or they
Mm,
don't articulate it right, or
mm,
they interviewee isn't able to get enough detail, or they don't, in some cases they, they allude something's happened, but they don't go into detail. Like it has to be detailed. Like
yeah.
the child has to give you detail of what's happened to, and without being too crude about it, they have to allude to whether it was a penetration, just a dealing. I
Yes.
mean, so because those facts matter at the end of the day,
Of
they matter
course.
to the court.
Yeah.
And so if you're unable to actually get the detail out of the child, then it's most likely going to be insufficient evidence
Right. Okay.
and written off.
So we've had cases come across our desk where the victim survivors have tried to sue civilly, and
Yes.
the police notes have included things like, "I believe them to be lying." Is that a normal note that you would take?
No, no, no. And
Right.
it's meant to be observations only.
Yeah.
Observations
Thank
and
you.
facts only.
Thank you.
Facts
Yeah,
and
that's what I
observations
thought.
only. This is what I have received. This is what has been said. This is what I have precluded from all of that. It should
Right.
be facts and observations. I have observed the mother say this. I have it should never be, I believe. And I can't say that I've never used that type of I can't remember all of the case files, but when I
Listener.
early on in my career, I had a detective say, or no, a very experienced senior constable, one of the best men I ever worked with, say to me, it takes just as much effort to not do the job as it is to do the job properly. So one of the things and I was very early on, I was a probationary constable, and he said to me, Kristi, if I could impart one thing to you is don't be the type of person that tries to get out of doing the work. Because a lot of police officers, in my experience, if they're old and crusty or they're just lazy, they will spend just as much time trying to write it off and not find the evidence than they do finding the evidence. And that is very possible.
Yes. Wow. Okay.
And he said to me, don't be one of those police officers, Christy, that spends more time trying to find a way not to do the job than to do the job. And it stuck with me. And he was so right, because I saw that happen time and time again.
Yeah.
And there was cases that I brought before the court that had been written off by another detective because they decided, like, they were like, insufficient evidence. And so, and it comes down to whether if you're detective or you're police officer, and I'm probably going to get huge issues like from other coppers for this, but if your detective is lazy, if your police officer is lazy and they don't do their job properly, then that's what is going to, if the evidence is there and they don't chase it, or sometimes the evidence isn't there. I've had cases where I was burrowing down every fucking rabbit hole trying to find every bit of evidence, and there was nothing I could find. There was nothing to support a child's statement or to the
Mm,
interview, and I've had to write
mm,
them off because there literally was not enough evidence to go to court.
mm.
That, it was just the child's evidence or the adult victim survivors evidence, and there was no witnesses, there was no nothing. Because in the court system, you have to have evidence. You have to have, supporting evidence to say or to substantiate that, well, at least this person was in this place at this time whilst this person
Of
says
course.
this happened, right? But
Yeah.
if you can't get that, if you can't prove that, then you literally can't put the charges forward.
Right. Yeah. But
And
like
you
you
think
said, there's
about the burden of proof is beyond a reasonable doubt. So
that's
civilly is
what.
different so the civil stuff, like, I'm not saying it's better or worse or whatever, but if you go criminal and, it's unfounded because, it's because the burden of proof is so high. But
Yeah.
when you
Absolutely.
go civilly, it's only balance of probabilities, possibly
Yeah.
could have happened.
Yeah. No,
It
absolutely.
yeah, so
But
it's
I've
a
just
very
found
different
I've
situation.
found notes like that in so many cases.
Yeah.
Notes like, "I believe they're lying," or notes like, question marks next to facts and things like that in the case notes. And it's destroyed the chance of a civil case. And, we've asked, okay, how come this was written and things like that? And it's like, I don't know, it's my case notes. But like you
Because
said, there's,
that's an opinion,
yes, that's right.
me, and I know I've seen people write similar things. So, and just again, like a case that I had very late in my career was of a woman who had been sexually assaulted by a doctor in the emergency room. So there's a bit of a story to it, but basically, I got given the case just as I just started in a new posting. They were like,
Right.
"You have this file, write it off." The sergeant came with me to try and interview the victim and said, "Just get rid of it. Get them to sign a reverse statement saying that they don't want to go ahead with it." That's what he told me. That was his instructions. He goes, "She's lying, right?"
Right.
Anyway, so I go and speak to her, and she's obviously got some mental health and some issues going on, but also very traumatized person. So,
Mm.
again, trauma shows up in very different ways, and trauma can make someone seem a very rational person seem irrational.
Yes.
And so I ended up pursuing her. Like I basically I kept talking to her and I kept checking in with her and I'm like, "I'm here if you need me. I'm here if you need me. Please come and see me at the station. I'm happy to take your statement." Anyways,
Mm.
she ended up providing a statement and I ended up following every rabbit down every hole. And this doctor had actually he was married with a child and stuff like that, and he had groomed or kind of groomed her before that because she'd been in hospital. So she ended up in the emergency room. Long story short, they'd left something inside of her stomach cavity. She had sepsis. She ended up
Ugh.
in the emergency room. But this doctor, this surgeon, trainee surgeon, had met her when she was in the ward and had
Yeah.
taken a fancy to her and had been trying to contact her. He had gone into her details, found her number, started contacting her, and like whole heap of stuff, right? But if I had have just done what my sergeant said, I would have written that off. This woman wouldn't have got justice, but we ended up going to trial. He got 3 years for sexually assaulting her and he was found guilty. He appealed. It was dismissed. So, like the thing was is that if I had have listened to my sergeant and my sergeants, because most of them were trying to tell me she was lying, and
Yeah.
I hadn't fought for her and continued to remind her that I'm here for her and even to the trial, right? So this is where I think a good detective, a good police officer is all the difference sometimes in these cases. And even
Yeah.
if some of my cases I couldn't get enough evidence, I was apologetic and I would say to them, I am so sorry. I wish I
Mm.
could, I just can't get it over the line. I can't find enough evidence. If anything comes up, please let me know. But, even to the point at the trial, I had to, with the DPP's permission, I had to get her sister to come with her because she'd moved over east to get away from
Mm.
WA. And she came back with her sister and went to trial and like we walked her through the trial and like I was supporting her all through the trial and just made sure she knew that, I was on her side. But I
Yeah.
don't know if that's in every case. Like that was me doing me.
That's the exception to the rule. And I'm so sorry to say that, but what you did was above and beyond compared to a lot of cases that I know. I'm not going to say most because, like you said earlier, we only
There's
see
some
the
good
bad.
detectives
We
out
only
there.
see, and there are some amazing detectives like yourself and the work that you just put in with that one client. But yeah, I see so often victim survivors just shushed because they get put in the too hard basket. Because, like you said, talks and
Yeah.
trauma is prickly, trauma is fiery. Traumatized victim survivors don't act in an easy manner to get
No.
information out of.
They don't act in a like, one of the things that I always tell people if especially if it's historical is to write it down and make a timeline because your memories don't come back in one fluid line. They come back in pieces. And so
Yep.
put it together in a timeline so that you can, you can have a start and a finish. So
Disclose.
when you
I
sit
love
down, so when you go
that.
to the police, you're ready and you're giving them everything. And then you don't have to go through the re-traumatization of going back and back and back to the detective or the police officer. I wish I had known all of this stuff when I was a police officer and detective. I would have done it so much differently. But I think I also knew intrinsically that I was a very I got made fun of by police officers. I got made fun of by fellow detectives. They used to call me the life coach because I used to sit with victims and talk to them, or even we'd be at search warrants and I'd be talking to the offenders and giving them life. I'd be coaching them. Like we'd be at a drug door and they'd be in someone's house and I was on, security with the perpetrator or whatever or the offender, and I would be
Yeah.
like, "Oh, what are you doing with your life, mate? Like, how did you get here?" And I'd be like chatting to them. I'm like, "You can get support, and here's some support places." And I'm like, "Do you want to change your situation? Do you want to keep going this way?" And the coppers used to say, "Why don't you become a life coach? Because that's what you're doing. Like, why do you give them so much time?" And I'm like, "Because behind every person is a human."
Yeah, 100%.
And they came here
100%.
and they all have a story of why they got where they are, and I think it's a good place to finish is that you are the one of those humans that are making a difference, Adam, and I
Thank
want
you.
you to know that.
Thank you. That's a very big statement. But yeah, that's funny. I could actually picture you sitting there.
I was always and, like, I'd be driving them to the watch house to get locked up for the night, and I'd be talking to them about getting their kids back and getting themselves straightened out, and, and, like,
Realize
my partners are like, "Fuck, like, Kristi, would you just leave them alone?" And I'm like, "No, these people need someone to believe in them."
that's that's awesome. It's
But I
so
tell you
good.
what, I was really good at interviewing offenders, and they most always talked. If they weren't gonna talk, they never talked, but if they were gonna talk, they would talk to me. 'Cause
You'd
they
be
were
the one to get
because I yeah, I'd be the one to get their confession or their, like,
100%.
evidence because they were like, "Oh, she really listens and she gets me." And it wasn't a
Yeah.
tactic, I promise, that's just who I am.
Nah, that's awesome. Yeah.
Well, I'll put all your, links to FACAA up and,
Please.
and I'd love to share more of your, like, any sort of charity organization stuff, and I'd love to be able to help raise donations for you guys because what you're doing is making a difference, and if we can see m if we can support more kids and more families, then that's what we want.
Well, that's the thing about FACAA is 100% of all donations go towards the victim survivors. There's no admin fees. There's no wages taken from FACAA. It just goes straight into the program.
You're a
But
true charity. You're a true charity.
thank you.
Well, have
Yeah,
a good rest of your day, Adam, and,
you too.
when this podcast goes up, I'll make sure everything's in there.
Awesome. Great. No worries. Make sure you let me know and I'll be sure to get it out there. Thanks, Chrissy. Cheers.
If this episode got you thinking or shifted something for you, that's exactly the point of this podcast. These conversations aren't always easy, but they matter. And the more we understand the roles we each play in protecting children, the better equipped we are to actually do something about it. Look, if you found this episode helpful, make sure you share it with someone who needs to hear it because awareness is great, but action is what keeps kids actually safe. And if you're ready to start having these conversations in your own home, just remember I've got heaps of resources on my website that can help you do this in a calm, practical, and age-appropriate way. You'll find everything in the show notes, including all of the information about FACAA and Adam. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you in the next episode.